Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Tackle Talk Network. This is our third episode of our first season of this podcast. I thank you all for tuning into last week's episode about the divisional round of the playoffs. And this week, we're going to be basically doing some of the same things. On episode 3, you should expect a recap of the divisional round, power rankings of this week, obviously opinionated by me, yours truly. Then we're going to be looking at some more coaching news, and to wrap it all up, got your conference championship weekend predictions. All right here on the Tackle Talk Network. All right, first let's get started with the first game of the divisional round. It was the Houston Texans traveling all the way north. I say north, it's in central United States, in Missouri, to a town called Kansas City, where they faced Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round of the playoffs. I had the Chiefs win by 2 touchdowns. They won by 2 scores. A total of, I believe, 9 points. Yep, 9 points. And, this game, it was okay. It was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be, but granted, it is the playoffs, and every team's going to try and bring their best. To start, we'll look at the Houston Texans side of things. C.J. Stroud went 19-28 for 245 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And let me just tell you, C.J. Stroud was sacked 8 times in this game. It ties second for an NFL record for most sacks in an NFL game. And we'll get in later. We'll get into that on the Chiefs side of things on who got those sacks. On the rushing attack, Joe Mixon carried the ball 18 times for 88 yards and a touchdown. Pretty solid numbers. C.J. Stroud also rushed 42 yards on 6 carries. Not bad rushing for the Texans either. Nico Collins led the room with 5 receptions and 81 yards. His longest reception of the day was 24 yards. And, really, this Texans offense, they looked good more in the third quarter. They put together a really long drive, but the really big problem with the Texans in this game, their defense wasn't too hot. Yeah, Will Anderson Jr., obviously he's a stud. He had 4 tackles. All of them are solo tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 TFLs. Will Anderson Jr. was definitely a big problem for the Chiefs. So was Tommy Tagia, number 72. I hope I didn't butcher that, but he also got a sack for the Texans. But the big problem for the Texans was they didn't force any turnovers on Kansas City, and instead, on the special teams side of things, they completely collapsed. You had the kicker, Kayami, something like that, Fairbairn, number 15, was 2 for 4 on field goals of the day. One of them was blocked. We'll get into that in a minute. His longest was 48. He missed the only extra point of the day that came in the third quarter. And, this was not a good day for Houston on the special team side of things, especially the very first play of the game. They gave up a big return for Kansas City. Nico Remigio took it for 63 yards on the opening kickoff. And granted, he did fumble there, but it was recovered by Samaje Perine. So let's go ahead and drift on over to the Kansas City Chiefs side of things. Patrick Mahomes, 16-25, 177 yards, which is kind of funny. 1 touchdown. He only took 3 sacks on the day. That's still a lot of sacks for a playoff game. On the rushing attack side of things, Kareem Hunt, 8 carries, 44 yards, a touchdown. Really, there wasn't any huge standouts. The team really only had 50 rushing yards because Matt Araiza had -18. There was a fake punt there at the end of the game where they were just trying to run time off the clock, and Matt Araiza went ahead and ran it out of the back or side of the end zone. And really, it just gave Houston 2 points off of a safety, and it just ran some time off the clock, ensuring that Houston can't do anything with their offense and score. And they ended up taking a knee at the end of the game anyways. But in reality, the Chiefs actually weren't that bad on the ground. Patrick Mahomes had 14 rushing yards. Isaiah Pacheco only had 18. And Kareem Hunt has 44, as I already stated. Xavier Worthy, tried an end around, and it got stopped. -8 yards. It's kind of been hit and miss this year with Xavier Worthy on those end around passes. However, receiving, Travis Kelce, we've been waiting for it, and we finally got it. Playoff Trav, 7 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. His longest was a 49-yard reception that came right after Hollywood Brown was targeted, and we all thought that it was a huge play down inside the 10. It was going to be like a 47-yard deep ball to Hollywood Brown. Ended up being incomplete, but the very next play, Travis Kelce took it 49 yards inside the 5 and set up the Chiefs for a 1st and goal, which ended up giving them a touchdown. I believe that was to Kareem Hunt. So, I mean, they did pretty good. Xavier Worthy, the rookie, 5 receptions, 45 yards. His longest of the day was a 21-yard catch that came in the second quarter. The Chiefs, I mean, they did pretty decent through the air compared to the Texans. I mean, if you just look at some of the team stats, you just look up on first downs, the Chiefs had less first downs than the Texans. The Texans actually had more first downs. The Chiefs had 2 first downs from penalties, which I'll get into those in a second. 3rd down and 4th down efficiency, the Chiefs were 1 for 2 on the day on 4th down, which one of those 4th downs really doesn't count because it was the Matt Araiza safety. He just ran out of the back of the end zone, so they really 1 for 1 on 4th downs. 3rd down efficiency, the Chiefs were 4 and 11 on 3rd downs. That is not great, but the Texans were 10 and 17. It's a lot better than the Chiefs, but not by a ton. The real big thing I wanted to look at here was total yards. The Texans had way more yards than the Chiefs. Texans' total yards was 336 to 212 for Kansas City. Neither team had turnovers, and actually, the Texans also had more time of possession in this game compared to Kansas City. Really, what it came down to was Kansas City being able to score in the red zone. Kansas City went 2 for 5 in the red zone, and Texans went 1 and 3. So the Chiefs scored another extra touchdown in the red zone, and that really ended up being one of the big differences in this game. If you just look at the stats, it looks pretty close. But if you were watching the game, you know that on the Chiefs' defensive side of things, we had an insane guy go crazy. First off, Justin Reed, 7 tackles, pretty good. He had 1 quarterback hit, 1 pass deflection. Brian Cook also with 6 tackles, but George Karlaftis is my MVP of this game. 5 tackles, 4 solo tackles, and 3 sacks. That is insane. That is just utterly crazy. Other players with sacks was Jamari Connor off a corner blitz, Charles Omenihu getting off the edge, and Chris Jones and Felix Anudike-Uzomah, the former Kansas City Chief. And that's pretty much it for the Chiefs, other than they had a really good day returning the ball. Nico Remigio, 3 returns, 110 yards off of punts. His longest of the day was the opening kickoff, 63 yards. So, I mean, the Chiefs, they win this one. And I know there was a lot of controversy online of people talking about how, you know, the Chiefs got 2 really easy penalties in this game, but I don't think that's really the case. I mean, yes, the penalties were bad, but if the game comes down to penalties and you're relying on the refs to make a good call for you to win a ball game, you shouldn't be in that position anyways if you're a good enough NFL team. Granted, the Texans were facing against the Chiefs, who are amazing, but if you're as good as you think you are, you shouldn't leave it up to the Zebras at the end of the game. Moving on quickly, because I've gotten a lot of feedback from you guys. You guys said my episodes need to be just a touch shorter, and we're already at the 10-minute mark, so anyways, so into this game, Commanders-Lions. By the way, before I move on to this game, I went so far in the playoffs, I've gone 7-3 on my predictions. That's pretty good. I got 2 of them wrong this week. I accidentally picked the wrong upset. We'll get into that with this game right here. I predicted the Lions to win by 2 touchdowns. I thought that a rookie quarterback in the playoffs, unheard of, really. The last quarterback to win a game in the divisional round of the playoffs was Joe Flacco. Yeah, Joe Flacco ended up being a really good football player and still kind of is to this day. We don't really know where he's at. But the Commanders put 45 points on the Lions, and there was a total of 42. Yeah, you heard me right. 42 points scored in the second quarter of this game at Detroit. The final score was 45-31 Commanders. Let's get into the stats a little bit. Jaden Daniels went 22 of 31, 299 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air, 0 interceptions. He also had 51 yards on the ground. His longest carry of the game was 15 yards. Also, who had their longest carry in the game was 15 yards was Brian Robinson Jr., who also had 15 carries, 77 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Really, the big difference in this game was over on Detroit's side. Jared Goff, 23 of 40. That's a lot of times throwing the ball. 313 yards, 1 touchdown, but 3 interceptions. By the way, Jaden Daniels was not sacked in this game. Jared Goff was sacked twice, and on one of those, he fumbled the ball. So in total, also, hold on, before I get ahead of myself, Jameson Williams also on a trick play threw the ball, and it got picked. So the big difference in this game was the Lions turned the ball over 5 times, and it just gift-wrapped the win for the Washington Commanders. Don't get me wrong, the Commanders are a really good football team. I mean, taking down the number 1 seed is not nothing to sneeze at. But when you turn the ball over 5 times in a game, you really expect to win. I know the Lions did it earlier this year, but when you're in the playoffs, every snap counts. Everything. Because you best bet that other team is not going to make any mistakes when you're making a ton of mistakes. But on the ground, Jahmyr Gibbs, 14 carries, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the Lions. Receiving-wise, for the Commanders, Dyami Brown, 6 receptions, 98 yards. His longest catch of the day was 42 yards. Terry McLaurin also having a good day, 87 receiving yards and a touchdown. And Zach Ertz caught the other touchdown for the Commanders, 28 yards, and that 1 score. Detroit on the receiving side, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8 receptions, 137 yards. Nothing short of excellent. Jahmyr Gibbs, 6 receptions, 70 yards. And then Sam Laporta also had the only receiving touchdown and passing touchdown from Jared Goff in this game. He had 6 receptions, 51 yards, and that 1 score. And that 1 score was awesome. He caught it pretty much one-handed. It was pretty good. Jared Goff, 1 fumble. I already talked about that. Dyami Brown did fumble in this game. But Frankie Louvu recovered it. So that was on special teams. Defensively for the Commanders, we had some really good players. Jeremy Chin, 12 total tackles is just nuts. Bobby Wagner there in the middle linebacker for the Commanders, 8 total tackles. Marshawn Lattimore, the corner, 5 total tackles, and he had TFL, which was really, really cool. But my MVP of this entire game definitely goes to Dorrance Armstrong, or at least one of them. He shares with one guy. 3 total tackles, 2 of those were sacks, also TFLs. Another player that played really, really good was, in fact, on the defensive side of things for the Lions, Jack Campbell did really all of it. Same with Alex Anzalone, both linebackers getting after it with 14 and 13 tackles. Brian Branch, the safety, also got in there and had 11 tackles. Both Alex Anzalone and Brian Branch both had 2 TFLs. So did Kirby Joseph in this game. And it was really, really, it was really good. My other X factor in this game, though, is Mike Sorenstill. I think I got that right. Number 0 for the Washington Commanders. 2 interceptions. He picked off Jameson Williams and Jared Goff both in this game. Jeremy Chin also had a pick, and so did Quan Martin. Both of these guys did really, really well. And really, it came down to, special teams was good. Zane Gonzalez did miss a field goal, which almost could have sealed the game late in the fourth quarter. The Lions tried to come back, but the Commanders were just too much, and they just didn't turn the ball over. And the Lions turned the ball over 5 times, which resulted in... Goodness, this is crazy. The Lions, I predicted them winning by 14. Well, the Commanders won by 14. So, there you have it, folks. That was my second prediction I got wrong in the playoffs, and I got this next one wrong too, but I was really close. We had the Los Angeles Rams traveling to Philly to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Final score, Rams 22, Eagles 28. The Rams had the ball last in this game, and they almost scored to try and win the game. They were only down 6. They could have easily won this game, and the thing was, it's just Matthew Stafford got sacked there on third down, forced fourth and long, and they just couldn't connect there on Puka Nacua on the right sideline. I get Rams fans think there should have been pass interference there, but I think if it would have been pass interference, it would have been kind of like trying to call a penalty on Mahomes. But anyways, getting into the stats here. Matthew Stafford, 26 of 44, 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 5 times. So, I mean, Matthew Stafford played a pretty decent game for the Rams. Granted, they were down most of the game. You know, it was 13-10 at halftime. And the Rams did get a safety in this game. That was really electric for the Rams defense. And let me just say, this Rams defense really did ball out. But on the Philly side of things, Jalen Hurts, 15 of 20, 128 yards. Really didn't do much, and you really didn't need to do much when you had Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts for that matter. Saquon Barkley had 26 carries, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also, against the Rams earlier in this season, had 26 carries, over 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That puts Saquon Barkley at a total of 465 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Rams. And if you add in his receiving yards, it's up there in the 520 region against the Rams this season. The Rams, I completely overestimated their defense's ability to stop Saquon Barkley because there was no way they were stopping him in this game. And Jalen Hurts, everybody's been questioning how healthy he's looked. Well, he had a total of 7 carries in this game, and he had 1 touchdown, but he had 70 yards rushing. His longest of the game was a 44-yard touchdown in the first quarter, and let me tell you, Philly almost didn't look back when they were going. On the receiving side of things for the Rams, or I guess the rushing, Kyren Williams, 19 carries, 106 yards. Not bad. 30 was his longest rush of the day. Matthew Stafford also had 5 yards rushing. I don't know why Matthew Stafford ran because he's not a mobile quarterback. But on the receiving side of things for Los Angeles, Puka Nacua led the room. Surprise, surprise. 6 receptions, 97 yards. His longest reception was 37 yards. He was targeted 14 times. I mean, you just got to haul in more of those. I get there was a couple of them that he couldn't get. They were just launched out of bounds. Demarcus Robinson also had 74 yards receiving. Philly's side of things, Dallas Goedert led the room, 4 receptions, 56 yards. Again, like Saquon Barkley had 27 yards receiving. That means in this game, he had somewhere around 233 yards. 232 yards. That's just insane against this Rams defense, who was actually pretty good, believe it or not. Christian Roseboom, something like that. 8 total tackles for the Rams. Led the room there on defense. Kobe Turner, 6 total tackles, 1 sack, 2 TFLs. But Jared Verse really went crazy. 4 tackles. They were all solo tackles. 2 sacks, 3 TFLs. Jared Verse, in my opinion, should be Defensive Rookie of the Year. These guys are just crazy. This Rams defense really balled out, even though they could not stop Saquon Barkley. On the defensive side of things, for Philly, Darius Slay Jr., 6 total tackles, and, C.J. Gardner-Johnson also had 6 total tackles. They had a lot of players with 6 tackles, really. Jalen Carter was the standout of the game and my X factor of the game for this divisional round matchup. He had 5 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 TFLs. Cooper DeJean also played pretty well there at corner, and so did Nolan Smith. This Rams-Eagles game, I really expected the Rams to win there at the end since they drove down the field, scored, and then got the ball back from Philly with just about over 2 minutes left. It was like 2 minutes, 10 seconds left. And they drove down the field, and they almost won. So my prediction, was off. I had the Rams winning by 1 score, and it almost happened. So, we'll see. And now for the game of the week that took the entire hour and however many minutes last week for me to predict. We had the Baltimore Ravens traveling to the Buffalo Bills I had the Buffalo Bills winning in a close one in this game, and that is exactly what happened. The final score, Baltimore Ravens 25, Buffalo Bills 27. A lot of people want to put the blame finger on why the Rams didn't win this. Not the Rams, excuse me, the Baltimore Ravens didn't win this game because of Lamar Jackson choking the playoffs, or the fact that, Mark Andrews fumbled in the middle of the field and he dropped the 2-point conversion. Really, I think the biggest issue in this game was I might not have said this in last week's episode, but I do remember telling my brother that if Derrick Henry does not rush for over 100 yards in this game, the Baltimore Ravens are losing because they can't really pass that much. Now, granted, one thing that they did not do was abandon the run late in the game. That was good. I mean, Buffalo was up at one point by 3 scores, and Baltimore had to come all the way back and try and win this thing. But let's get into the stats a little bit. Lamar Jackson, 18 for 25, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. That 1 interception ended up being really costly. Josh Allen, 16 for 22, 127 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, was only sacked once. Lamar was sacked twice in this game. That ended up being some of the deciding factor in this game was that interception and that Lamar's was just sacked more. On the ground, however, Baltimore, Derrick Henry had 16 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. I mean, 84 yards, that's pretty good if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. But if you're the Baltimore Ravens, that's not good because your rushing attack. I mean, as a team, they had 176 yards rushing. Lamar Jackson had 39. Rushing-wise, they were okay. But they had more receiving yards than rushing yards. And I feel like they just kind of abandoned their game plan from running the ball, especially because Buffalo really couldn't run the ball that much. Them turning the ball over really ended up hurting them because it was forcing them to pass more, and the Baltimore Ravens are not a pass-first team. Anyways, on the receiving side of things for Baltimore, Isaiah Likely, 4 receptions, 73 yards and a touchdown. Rashad Bateman, 4 receptions, 66 yards and a touchdown. And Mark Andrews had 5 receptions for 61 yards. And he definitely should have had way more yards than that. And he also had a fumble that was lost. And so did Lamar Jackson. Don't forget that much. Tyron Wallace, I'm looking at you because you also fumbled, but luckily you recovered your own fumble. Risky, dude, risky. You can't be fumbling in the playoffs. Baltimore's receiving corps was led by Khalil Shakir. 6 receptions, 67 yards. Really, on offense, no one really did much for the Buffalo Bills. It was really their defense that really stepped it up. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens outgained the Buffalo Bills in every single statistical category when it came to yardage and everything else. It's just the defense that really did good. So Buffalo fumbles. Von Miller was one of the ones that recovered the Lamar Jackson fumble and returned it for I don't even know how many yards, a lot of yards. And Terrell Bernard was the one that recovered Mark Andrews' fumble, which was actually kind of cool because he forced it. So he forced the fumble and recovered his own forced fumble. Defensive side of things, Kyle Hamilton led the room for the Ravens with 6 total tackles. Nanami Madubuike, something like that, number 92 for the Ravens, 7 tackles with half a sack. Another half a sack by Kyle Van Noy. They teamed up on Josh Allen and got him on the ground. Travis Robinson, though, for the Ravens, 4 tackles and 2 TFLs. On the Buffalo defense side of things, Damar Hamlin, 8 tackles, 1 sack. That was impressive from Damar Hamlin. That's probably the best statistically on defense that I've seen him do all season, especially ever since, I believe it was 2 years ago when he had that collapse on the field. But he's really been a key part of this Buffalo defense, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future. Greg Rousseau, 5 tackles and a sack for Buffalo. I mean, really what it came down to was the Bills did what they could. They controlled the ball. And Ravens, they just turned the ball over too much. Just same with the Lions, man. Were the Ravens the better team this game? I think they were. Yeah, I think they were. I think they could have easily beat the Bills. I had the Bills winning because I knew that Lamar Jackson probably wasn't going to be able to pull it together. I love Lamar. He's a great player. But at the end of the day, it's a team sport. And, you make mistakes. But I feel like at the end of the game there, Mark Andrews needed to make a play, and it just couldn't be made. Respect to all these players, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but the tape doesn't lie. Tape don't lie. That's what my football coach says, and I believe it. Tape don't lie. So that's your divisional round matchups. And we're going to get on now to this week's power rankings. Now, a lot of you that watched my last week's power rankings know that I had the Lions at number 1. And yeah, the Lions I still believed were the best team in the NFL. But just for your information, my brother, when the Lions turn the ball over 5 times in a single game, you really expect that they're going to win unless the other team turns the ball over 5 times or like 6 times as well, which is unheard of, and that would be sloppy football. The Lions lost because they played sloppy football. But anyways, getting into the power rankings this week, I'm going to start at number 4 because there's only 4 teams left, and we're going to work our way up to number 1. And number 4 in this week's power rankings, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. Reason being, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're playing against a tough Rams team that was pretty good. And the Rams, anywho, when it comes to the Eagles in these power rankings, I really do feel like they deserve to be at 4. My major reason is that Jalen Hurts might not be as lethal, and he might not be at 100% like he has been in the past. And he came off that injury, and then during the game, something happened with his knee, came out wearing a knee brace, didn't really do much after that. I think he threw like 1 pass, and then just handed the ball off after that. And the Eagles, really their offense at the moment, what they've shown so far in the playoffs, is just Saquon Barkley. However, I do think that this Eagles offense has a chance to just go out and explode and do very, very well. But right now I have them at number 4. Number 3, I have the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, I put them at number 3 because they've pretty much been at number 3 this entire time. The Buffalo Bills, they took down a very good opponent in the Baltimore Ravens. A win is a win, no matter how you get it, by 1 or 100. That's one of the most famous sayings that my coach tells me. And, the Buffalo Bills, they're great. Josh Allen, James Cook, all these guys, they have played really, really well. They didn't play the greatest against the Ravens, but they got the job done. And that's all that matters, really, is getting the win, no matter how you get it. And so this Bills team, they're number 3 for me. They're, in my opinion, not the best team in the NFL, but we'll just see about that next week. And number 2, I have the Washington Commanders. Now, a lot of people are like, whoa. You have the 6th seed in the playoffs for the NFC at number 2. Yeah, actually I do. Because the Washington Commanders have been really solid. And I'm sorry, but when you have a rookie quarterback that leads you to the NFC Championship game, you think it's just going to be easy? It's not going to be easy, especially if you're a Commanders fan. Like, you're looking at this game going, well, crap, our season might end tomorrow. But it's fine because you got a lot in the future. But, I really do think that the Commanders have a great chance against the Eagles. More or less so because they put 45 points on the Lions. That cannot be skipped over. There's no way you force 5 turnovers against the number 1 seed in the NFC and then just do nothing against the Eagles. But we'll get into that matchup here in a minute. At number 1, no surprise here, for the first time in this podcast history, which is kind of weird, it's only been lasting like a month, I have the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1. Reason being, best record left, only 1 seed, and nobody can beat the Chiefs unless proven otherwise. Really, they got the Bills this week at home, and I think it's going to be a great game. But let's get on in to the conference championship games. But first, before I do that, I got you all. You all are thinking that I'm just going to skip over the coaching news? What is wrong with you? You really think I'm just going to skip over? Sorry about that. Anyways, so in the NFL, we got some coaching news going on right now. In the NFC side of things, we had the Chicago Bears. They fired their head coach, Matt Eberflus, a couple of weeks ago. Well, not just a couple of weeks ago, like mid-season almost. And, Buddy took his timeouts to Cancun. But listen here, the Chicago Bears, as of today, finally got their head coaching replacement. They went out and got Ben Johnson. If some of you don't know who Ben Johnson is, he was the offensive coordinator formerly for the Detroit Lions, who just lost in the NFC divisional round. So, really good pickup here for the Chicago Bears. And then one signing that continues to make moves is Mike Vrabel got signed to the New England Patriots, who he won 2 Super Bowls with. I mean, I talked about this last week in last week's episode, but so far he's pulling some strings and he's getting some coordinators and some position coaches. And yeah, that's pretty much all that's going on right now in the NFL coaching carousel. But anyways, now on to the divisional games. All right, when I said divisional games, I meant to say conference champions, because there is official 4 teams left if you haven't already caught on to the drift here in the NFL. And let me tell you guys, there's going to be some good games here in this weekend. First off, both games will be on Sunday, and then 2 weeks after that, we will have the Super Bowl. So, on Sunday, the first game at 2 o'clock will be the Washington Commanders traveling to Philly to play the Eagles at 2 p.m. on Fox. Later that evening, the Buffalo Bills will travel to take on the Kansas City Chiefs at 5:30 on CBS. Now, to start, let's look at this Commanders-Eagles matchup because it is an intriguing one, at least it is to me. The Commanders and the Eagles. First off, the Commanders are on the road, which they have been really, really good at this season from just a game standpoint. They did just beat the Lions by hanging 45 on them. So, I mean, we'll see, right? But, I mean, it was in what was it like? It was like in back in week 12, they played the Eagles at Philly. It was a 1-score game, and they lost in that one. But just a few weeks back, they played the Eagles at the Commander Stadium, and they beat them 36-33 in a nail-biting, down to the wire, last-second touchdown comeback fashion. It was really, really good for the Commanders. So they're tied 1-1 in the series, and it comes down to a divisional round matchup for the NFC Championship game. And, both teams have the potential to apparently put as many points on the other team as they really want to. It just depends on how good that defense is. Now, don't get me wrong. The Eagles' defense is fantastic, and it will definitely put the Washington Commanders to the test, especially Jaden Daniels, the rookie, in a hostile environment in Philly. Last time they played in Philly, they lost, but I really do think that Jaden Daniels have a good shot in this one. Here's my take, though. If the Eagles and Saquon, it seems like a magical number. If Saquon can get over 150 yards in this game, I say the Eagles win, no matter what happens. Unless they obviously turn the ball over 5 times. Come on, Detroit, what are we doing? But if the Commanders can hold Saquon under 150 yards and can keep Jalen Hurts under 200 yards passing, I think the Commanders win this game. And you know what? That's going to be my prediction. I have the Washington Commanders advancing on to the Super Bowl to go play in New Orleans. I have them winning by 1 score. That's either 3 points, 7 points, anywhere in there, If the other team can score a field goal or a touchdown and take the lead or tie it, then it counts as a 1 score. So if they win by 1 point, that counts as a 1-score game. So I'm going to say they win from anywhere between 1 and 8 points. 1-score game. No more than that. Because this is going to be a very tight game. It's going to be at 2, and I'm going to watch every second of it, and I hope you guys too. Later that evening, we have Buffalo traveling to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs at 5:30. It's going to be the game of the day. And listen, man, the Buffalo Bills have been playing really, really good, really solid, nice, clean football. So have the Chiefs. And neither of them have really outgained their opponents or outtimed their opponents in anything. The only difference is They know how not to take sacks. They know how not to turn the ball over. And I really do think that this game's going to come down to who turns the ball over and who controls the clock. That's what it's really going to come down to in this game. I have the Kansas City Chiefs winning and advancing on to play the Washington Commanders in the Super Bowl. And the reason being is, I have them winning by 3. Not just one score. I have the Chiefs winning by 3. It seems like it's been a safe bet the last couple of years to have the Chiefs win by 3 points in a close game with Buffalo. It obviously almost never happens in the regular season anymore. But, it always seems to happen in the playoffs. So, finally, you guys get an episode that will be under 40 minutes. I hope you enjoy it. If you think I talked a little too fast, you can always slow it down, and that might take you an hour. But just so that way you guys can listen to my entire episode, and you guys can give me your full advice and full takeaways from this episode. I will post this to YouTube. YouTube has been kind of new for my episodes kind of thing. I didn't post episode 1 on there, but I did episode 2, and this one will be on there as well. You can also check out my first episode on Spotify. Spotify is free to download on the phone, and it's good. You can get on the computer. It's a good listen. You should listen through it. There's some music on it. I didn't really like all that music. I just like the intro and the outro. So, with that being said, whether you're outside working or inside sitting at home, I thank you for listening to my podcast. Go ahead and drop a like and a follow, subscribe if you're on YouTube, and give me a 5-star rating if you're on Spotify. Would greatly appreciate it. I don't really like asking for things, but someday I'd like to make this a career, and I can only do that with you guys' help. So I thank you for tuning in and listening to the Tackle Talk Network, and I'll see you all next week.